So the team that I chose to use in this video, which I take seriously for most of the gameplay and then I stop caring towards the end, which is typically how these things go, is the Charlotte Hornets, a team whose head coach, Steve Clifford, could be on the hot seat. At least that's what Google and Twitter tell me. So I think we can open this video up with him and then bring up some other coaches throughout the NBA who could be on the hot seat moving forward, and who's the next guy to get fired, because that's always a fun topic. People becoming unemployed. Anyway, the thing with Steve Clifford, I think he's a good coach, okay? The Hornets run a lot of pick and rolls. They shoot a decent amount of three-pointers. They don't give up too many offensive rebounds. Typically a pretty okay defensive team in transition. Also, don't turn the ball over too much. Fundamentally sound, right? And if you look at the Hornets roster, outside of Kemba Walker, not a whole lot of guys who can really create like that. Batum's got some abilities off the bounce, but, you know. However, I do think it could be a fair thing for this Steve Clifford conversation to come up because, number one, I think Clifford is very stubborn to the point where he will not accept that Michael Carter-Williams sucks. And I know something recently just happened with MCW to where his future in the NBA is up in question. He had surgery, which of course is never fun. That's irrelevant to how good of a player you are. Surgery and having injuries, you don't wish that on anybody. But throughout this season, MCW was not good. He was one of the worst players in the NBA. Super inefficient as a shooter, a passer, just basically everything. And he still managed to play about 16 minutes a game for a decent amount of the season, whereas guys like Malik Monk, big example, just kind of sat on the bench. I didn't really understand what Steve Clifford had going on with that one. But another thing with Clifford, I think, is I think he's the type of coach where he'll make your team really fundamentally sound and your team won't make a whole lot of mistakes and all that. But I don't know if he has the ability to take a team to another level, because I think he's almost too conservative of a coach. So for some examples, like Brad Stevens doesn't have a problem with getting weird sometimes with lineups. He'll put 3 guards out there. He'll have this constant rotation between Horford and Morris and Baines and Daniel Tice and Greg Monroe up front, depending on the opponent. Greg Popovich will just not care at all about what the rest of the NBA is doing, and he'll do post-ups, and he'll have Pau Gasol as his starting center, and he'll shoot a bunch of mid-range jumpers. Another one would be Eric Spoelstra, who's not afraid to take out Hassan Whiteside because he struggles with defending out of the paint, and he'll put in Bam Adebayo in big moments. I just don't see Clifford getting weird all the time. And sometimes it's good to get weird because that's when you unlock different lineups, and he's also just stupid when it comes to like playing young players and all that type of stuff. And given where the Hornets are at right now, where they haven't been very good with Clifford in there, on top of the fact that Kemba's future with the team is in question, and I think it's a possibility that Steve Clifford might not be the head coach of this team for that much longer. This might be a team that needs to start caring a little bit more about playing young guys, not just because they might be better than the veterans that are playing above them, but also because, I mean, you know, this team is at its very best, what, a 44-win team if everything goes well? And Kemba Walker's got 1 year left. You know, some writing on the wall. I've definitely seen some commotion about firing Ty Lue on Twitter, at least from people who want him fired. Yeah, I mean, from an X's and O's standpoint, Ty Lue kind of sucks. He can draw up some plays for Kyle Korver to move off the ball, but a lot of the time it's LeBron, just be LeBron, please. I think the question with that would be Kobe Altman and just how he is as a general manager. I mean, we've already learned that he's definitely not afraid to go for it. because of the moves he made at the trade deadline. Would he see the Ty Lue situation and just be like, this dude isn't maximizing us as a team, and maybe someone like a David Fizdale would be better for us? Well, a lot of that's going to be dependent on LeBron, and if LeBron wants to stay. I mean, if LeBron stays, then maybe you would keep Ty Lue just for the sake of not wanting to shake things up too much. But at the same time, I mean, Fizdale, like Lue, will also command the attention of his team. At least it seems like Fizdale has that type of leadership to him. But then he's just way better at basketball things, right? Like starting JaMychal Green over Zach Randolph and shooting more threes and stuff, and giving the ball to Mike Conley a little bit more often. Now, if LeBron James decides to leave, then you definitely fire Ty Lue, because at that point it's like you probably attempt to build something that you can like be happy with in a few years, and you try to acquire some draft picks on top of the Nets pick that you already have, of course. Then you would take on a coach who you plan to keep for a while, who's more of an X's and O's nerd type of dude, and, you know, kind of like what the Brooklyn Nets have done with Kenny Atkinson, and what the Cavaliers originally wanted to do with David Blatt before LeBron James showed up. I think Stan Van Gundy with the Pistons at least deserves some talking about. I think he will be back next year. The Pistons have just not had that good of a roster, has been the biggest problem. Like, Reggie Jackson is a very average starting point guard. I have to assume if you start listing off all the points in the NBA, he probably ends up somewhere like number 17 or 18. Drummond's made improvements this year with his offense through free throws and passing and off the dribble stuff. But even then, Drummond is not going to be the leader of an offense, you know? And to Stan Van's credit, the Pistons have been pretty okay defensively for the past couple of years, so he's done what he can. It's just the roster itself isn't the best. I mean, I already said how I felt about the Blake Griffin trade when it happened. I was hesitant to say it would be anything that good for them because of the loss of spacing and everything, and fortunately for them, that's kind of been the case so far. We'll have to see with another year, but I think the Pistons are kind of locked into Stan Van. That's the impression that I'm getting. Someone else who's been out there is Frank Vogel of the Magic. I mean, he's done some things that I haven't been a fan of, mainly last year with the whole Serge Ibaka, Aaron Gordon thing. And I do think this season, the Magic have been perhaps a little too conventional in terms of like the amount of bigs they play and how often they seem to want to get Bismack Biyombo going and pick and rolls and things. I mean, here's an interesting thing for you. According to Basketball Reference, Aaron Gordon has only played 2% of this season at the center position. I would definitely try him at the 5 sometimes. You put him at center, Hazonia at power forward, I guess. Isaac's been out a lot this year. And then between Fournier and Jonathan Simmons and Terrence Ross, like, you have a lot of athletic wings who can do some stuff and play a few positions here. But it seems like Vogel a lot of the time just wants to just stick Vucevic at center for the 30 minutes a game where everything just kind of slows down, you know? So I can understand the rationale in wanting Vogel out and getting someone, again, like David Fizdale, who might want to get a little more weird. I like coaches who get weird, you know? Another one is Jeff Hornacek for the Knicks. I hope Hornacek doesn't go down just as like the fall guy because something has to happen because of the Knicks this year. The one thing I will say is I do wish he was a little more creative with how he got the ball to Porzingis, because a lot of the time it was just throw it to him from around 17 feet. And then he would just rise up for the 3, or not the 3, it would be like a mid-range. And I do think that attributed a little bit to Porzingis tiring out, because when you constantly have like a defender with an elbow in your back or on your side all the time, that can weigh on you, you know? Whereas if you had Porzingis moving a little bit more off the ball and getting a few more three-pointers, it could allow him to hold up a little bit more physically. And it's just better offense, you know? Like, when you have your 7'4" dude moving, it's just, you know, you get it. But still, I think Hornacek's a pretty okay coach. I think he's shown that he can be good. This Knicks team just isn't that talented, so I don't think he really deserves to be, like, the scapegoat of all this, but hopefully he's not, you know? That's what I would say. But, yeah, are there any other coaches that could be on the hot seat? I guess the Bucks will probably be looking for a long-term coach after Jason Kidd's firing and Joe Prunty, who's just kind of there, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Those are some of the coaches in the league who I felt it was worth talking about a little bit. We'll see who gets fired, who doesn't get fired, if maybe none of these guys get fired and someone else that I didn't talk about. Who knows? But shout out to Rick Carlisle, and I'm done.